Closure. Closure is defined as the act of bringing something to an end, the satisfying sense of completion and finality. It is a closing statement that brings the narrative full circle, allowing us to finally make peace and move on. But that also begs the question, what happens if someone decides to actively not move on? What happens if an author decides to milk the entire thing and potentially ruin what once was? That is exactly what happened with Oregairu, one of the best romance anime of all time. He already wrote a perfect ending, the main girl won, and the sales were good. But the author thought, you know what? I got one more left in me. And it was fucking dog shit. For those who don't know, the story of Oregairu, or My Youth Romantic Comedy is Wrong as I Expected, essentially follows three main characters. Our boy, Hikigai Hachiman, Yukinoshita Yukino, and Yuigahama Yui. Hachiman is a teenage social outcast with a deeply troubled outlook on life. Throughout his childhood, Hachiman was constantly being bullied and ostracized by his peers. His traumatic past experiences conditioned him to be highly distrustful of others and other people's kindness, and outright despises superficial relationships, even going so far as to say that everyone enjoying their youth can all go to hell. Yikes. Worried for his future, his homeroom teacher, Hiratsuka Sensei, best girl by the way, forces him to join the service club, and it is a club headed by our next character, Yukino. Yukino is a brutally honest and fiercely intelligent individual. Just like Hachiman, she was also a victim of bullying, though in her case it's because of her beauty and sharp intellect causing the other girls to exclude her out of jealousy. Yet despite all of her harsh past experiences, unlike Hachiman, she still believes in personal growth, even for the very people who have wronged her. And last but not least, we have Yui, the cheerful, emotionally intuitive, and outgoing person of the club. While she might not match Hachiman and Yukino in a battle of wits, she more than makes up for it with her raw emotional intelligence, serving as the bridge between the cynical Hachiman and a fiercely independent Yukino. But despite all of this, she does struggle with suppressing her own feelings for the sake of avoiding conflict. And this is what makes this anime special. Normally, with standard rom-coms, characters growing closer and closer is just bound to happen at some point, especially with the classic two girls, one guy setup. But imagine a scenario where the guy and the girl have an undeniable chemistry with each other, while the second girl is forced to just stand by and watch, completely paralyzed by the fact that she is deeply in love with him too. And to make matters worse, every single one of them is fully aware of the situation, but they're far too afraid to rock the boat, forcing them to actively suppress how they really feel, and thus leaving Hachiman trapped in this massive contradiction. The very guy who built his entire identity on critiquing superficial relationships is now actively participating in one. Realizing this hypocrisy, he makes the incredible and painful decision to finally confront the both of them head on. What he wants is something genuine, a completely honest, authentic relationship with both Yukino and Yui. So, skipping past all that bullshit excuses and mental gymnastics Hachiman had to go through just to get to this point, the series concludes with the club finally opening up and laying all their cards on the table. Through that painful honesty, Hachiman gently lets Yui know that she no longer has to wait for him. And finally, leaving Hachiman to make a lifetime business proposition that even Yukinoshita Yukino just can't turn down. Hold up, this ain't the end of the video yet. So, take everything that you just watched like this and because instead of letting this amazing series lay to rest, the author decided to try and milk the series dry by releasing Oregairu Shin. Oregairu Shin is a 6-volume short novel series that was bundled exclusively with the Blu-ray sets of the final season of the anime, making it a Japan-only release. It's basically set during the main cast's 3rd and final year of high school, mostly focusing on how their new club room dynamic functions right after the events of the main ending. So, naturally, curious about what Japan was trying to gatekeep from us, I decided to track down the translations and see what the fuss was all about. And my god, was it a mistake. Because instead of acting like it's bonus content or a short epilogue, it instead created the most unnecessary drama between the club members all over again, and this time with Yui's residual feelings for Hachiman. This is my problem with Oregairu Shin. It disregards the original message of the original series by breaking out of status quos in exchange for genuine connections. Because throughout the entire run of the original series, they have criticized others and themselves for falling into this pit of stagnating friendships for the sake of keeping them around, regardless whether it's good for them or not. Because stagnation kills growth. Here in Shin, yes, they're much open with each other now and they're comfortable with taking jabs at each other. But at the expense of other people's relationships just for the sake of keeping them around, it feels and reeks of toxicity. Because apparently, behind the scenes, Komachi, Hachiman's own sister, has been actively enabling this sort of behavior where she encourages the girls around him to fight over him and everything is fair. Like, what? Komachi? Who needs enemies when you have a sister like this? I genuinely feel bad for Yukino in this novel because she sees her man every day getting ganged up on by these wolves trying to make a pass on him. Are they really friends or are they taking advantage of Yukino's kindness? And my biggest complaint so far is not the other characters and how they interacted, but how the main character acts here and how he is portrayed. So it all started with Yukino and Hachiman coming back from an awkward family dinner with the Yukinoshita family. Because apparently, Hachiman had been ducking this dinner for months and Yukino was trying to prepare him for it. So when the time finally came, Hachiman was so nervous that he ended up making rude comments to both Yukino's mother and sister, and even failing to establish what kind of relationship he has with Yukino. This is just a shadow of a once great man who just so happens to have the same name and the same face. Because he just could not give a straight answer. And the worst one of all, he couldn't answer Yui's confession, let alone reject it outright. Because when Yui finally manages to convince Hachiman to go on a date with her, Yui confesses her feelings. And for some reason, Hachiman is just standing there dumbfounded, unable to respond or even just reject her, or say no for that fact. He just gave her a half-assed reply saying, "Oh, I'm unable to respond to your feelings properly yet." Like, bro, you have a partner. What are you doing? By giving Yui proper closure, he will release her of this curse of waiting for the day he can actually express his feelings properly. Isn't that the main reason you softly turned her down the last season? You don't have to wait for me. That was your message to her. This is a complete opposite of the OG Hachiman, a man of his word and a very devoted partner. OG Hachiman would have slapped the shit out of Shin Hachiman for being so indecisive. This honestly feels like this was just a platform to soft launch the author's what-if scenario where Yui wins. Luckily, that was just the first 3 volumes of Shin. Any more than that, it would have given me a heart attack. It was just pure torture. The good news is that Yukino and Hachiman are still a thing, despite the looming threat of these wolves all around them. They have their own chapters flirting with each other, they're going on their own dates, ultimately giving us diabetes. But that said, no matter how good the food was, if it leaves a bad aftertaste, it's gonna be bad. In conclusion, Oregairu Shin is unfortunately just a sad attempt at trying to revive a series and see where it could branch off. And clearly, it did not resonate well enough for it to justify a global publication. And I believe that Oregairu Shin should never have been published in the first place. The author should have focused on a completely different IP for them to fully move on and stop milking this dry.